So today I'm going to talk about American exceptionalism, as well as this notion that we are the greatest country in the history of the world. I don't want to get beyond all the talk of what politicians say and get down to the brunt of the issue. One, is the idea exceptional? Two, are we currently exceptional? Which goes hand in hand with number one, actually. Can we be exceptional if not? So I think the exceptional, when we're talking exceptional, it should be something that sets us apart from everyone else, that sets us apart from the world. Either it's hard to say through history, thousands of years, because we have only so much record, but at least in modern times, can we say that we are exceptional? And I would say, in terms of the idea, the founding, that we are exceptional. Now, understanding that there are exceptional does not mean perfect. So there's still some very grave problems, even when you talk about the founding fathers. Top amongst them, slavery. I mean, you don't get much worse than that. So when I say this, I'm talking purely about the ideology. When you're talking about some of the ideas that came within the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and moreover, how they've withstood the test of time, which in itself is exceptional and unique when it comes to the governance of a country. So what I mean by that is these ideas of separation of church and state, of balance of powers, of the Bill of Rights. These are all, while there are forerunners to a lot of these ideas, these are all, as they were derived from the founding fathers, were exceptional. I would certainly say that. And I would say the fact that it's withstood the test of time for well over now, for multiple centuries. When you go back to 1776, we are talking about incredible stability, all things considered. There have been protests, there have been riots, but all in all, things have held together. And there was a civil war, of course, but things have held together, and you don't see that in other places. So in that regard, I would say the system of governance, the general democracy, the political freedoms allotted are exceptional. The fact that we're able to protest without usually worrying about getting shot, which you don't see in other countries, and the political freedoms, these are exceptional things. So I would certainly, the answer to the first part is, the ideas, many of them are exceptional, and I believe that's at the core of why you could say we're the greatest country in the world. But we have not actually made it to that point. Now, past is the past. I can't speak to all of that, but I can say at this point where we're sitting now, we are not exceptional and we are not the greatest country in the world. We should aspire to be that. So don't, too many times when people say that, they say, oh, you're anti-American, you're dissing them. It's not the case at all. You know, when you have friends, when you love someone, when you have love for something, you have to be able to be honest and say, okay, there are some good things here, there are also some bad things we got to work on. All right? And that's, when we talk to our allies, we should also be the same way. We don't want to do that in certain circumstances. So where I'm getting at with this is you have to ask, what's going on right now? Now, certainly you can go out and protest without worry of being killed, without usually getting arrested, although some of that is starting to change. You're starting to see some very high level crimes being, people being thrown in jail for protesting. So we're starting to see some of that. And some legislatures want to pass laws to make it okay to run over protesters. Things like that are very troubling. And, Trump wants to expand the libel law. So all these things are troubling, no doubt. But ultimately, compared to other countries, we're doing all right in that regard. But we're not the greatest country in the world. Because when you think about it, what should a great country have? It should have very strong education. You should have, a large, thriving middle class. You're going to have some poor people and some rich people. But you have a thriving middle class, which is going to generate a strong economy. Right? We don't have that. We have ever expanding inequality. All right? You should have civil rights, full civil rights. And while no doubt we've done a lot of good things, we've made improvements through through Civil War and slavery, through Jim Crow. There have been improvements. There's no doubting that. But we're not anywhere near where we need to be. When you look at the drug laws in this country, which are incredibly racist, that target minorities at a disproportionate rate. When you look at the behavior of the police, when you look at the news, no less. I mean, people are getting they're calling the cops on. I mean, for like sitting in a subway or sleeping in a dorm or you know basically things like this. That I'll admit I've done a lot of these things and I have not been had the police called on me. So we have a long way to go in that aspect. From a class point of view, we're seeing when these drug problems hit, be they in the city or the rural areas, they always hit the poor people, and you see crime. It's always hitting the poor people. The only time you hear about a crime usually is when it's some rich upper middle class white kid. So these, and part of this is permeated by the media. Part of it is within the system already. But if we want to become great, we have to be better in that regard. If you can't provide basic necessities to your whole country, I'm saying water, food, things of this nature, are you really great? I mean, Flint doesn't have clean water yet, so how can you tell me that we're great? Our education system is starting to fall apart. We don't score well in things like that. We don't score well in health care. We spend so much money in our health care. People are dying because they can't afford health care oftentimes, or if they can, or if they're not dying, they're just having to choose between food and medicine. All right, this is not great. So within domestic policy, we're not great. And then we look abroad. So there's always this fight of saying, people like to say, oh, we're fighting for democracy around the world. We're fighting for human rights. And again, it's not true either. It's selective. So in some places, yes, we do. We fight for the democratic forces. We fight for democracy. But in our history, especially the last 50 years, actually 50 to 75 years, we don't do that either. We also overthrow democratically elected government, and a lot of it's driven by our fear, our Cold War mentality, fear of the Soviet Union, fear of communism, and in doing so, we've forgotten the fact the biggest danger in the world really is right wing, like the Nazis. All right, so in doing that, we've overthrown governments in Iran and Chile. What have we done? In Chile, and then we back dictators. In Central America, Latin America, all over. And you look even in today. What do? We are, we rightfully are against certain dictatorships, like what's kind of forming in Russia. We're critical of that. We're critical of Iran, rightfully so. But at the same time, we are hand in hand with a place like Saudi Arabia, which is basically, they behead their people for basic things like blogging. They, only just recently let their women drive. They have, they have no women. They have barely any other women's rights. Minority rights are bad there. They're very authoritarian. Like I said, they have very vicious corporal punishment. We're rightfully mad when ISIS was beheading people, but we turn a blind eye when Saudi Arabians do it. They're dropping bombs all over Yemen, and we say not a word. because they're our ally. That's not great. That's not great. When you talk about Israel, again, rightfully critical. You can be rightfully critical of the PLO and the Palestinian leadership, because they've been at times quite authoritarian, and they've not been good at all for their people, and oftentimes. So it's right to be critical of them. But then at the same time, you're very, very tight with Israel. And I understand that they have traditionally a liberal democracy within their borders, which is a lot like the West, except for the fact there's a little problem of the occupation. And you have a whole bunch of people who basically not even second-class citizens that are no-class citizens. They're not citizens. They're people without a country. And to basically go there and celebrate moving an embassy to Jerusalem, basically you're acting like these people don't exist, and then you're going to pretend like you want peace, is a load of horseshit. It's just not viable. So you're going to sit there and say about peace, but you're not getting any feedback from those people. So that's not great either. I mean, Trump looking and backing someone like Duarte, it's not good either. So it's a lot of nuance and a lot of complicated issues. So we shouldn't sit here and fool ourselves and say, "Oh, we're all about democracy and peace," when we clearly haven't shown that. All right, and I want to take another step back to domestic policies, which kind of goes hand in hand with the foreign policy aspect. If ever we want to raise a little bit of money to help with tuition payments, or if we want to raise a little bit of money to help, with Medicare or expanding health insurance, what's the first thing you hear? How are we going to pay for it? Or even if you want to, build up infrastructure, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? You hear it all the fucking time. But if you need to raise $70 billion in the military budget, not a damn question. Because they have so many lobbyists, the military industrial complex is taking everything over. So we can spend trillions of dollars in Iraq on a stupid fucking war that's caused so much blood and treasure to this and other countries. But at the same time, we can't raise a fraction of that for increasing our infrastructure. We need good infrastructure. Our infrastructure is falling apart for health care, education. So when our priorities are so mixed up, we're not great. So, but we should strive to be great. And that's what something a true patriot should say. True patriots should not consider this as an anti-American thing or anything like that. But we should look at ourselves and improve ourselves. As simple as that. So, that's all I want to say on that. And I may do another video tonight. I haven't decided yet. But like I said, being critical of your own nation is not a bad thing. All right? If you have a constructive criticism, there's a lot of value, and we can learn, and we have to keep getting better, because we need to strive to get to that ideal, to what the founding fathers envisioned, except even better than what they envisioned, because we've evolved over time in our ideas and our beliefs. So we got to just continue with that. So until next time, have a good night.